It's a headband that has different sensors in it to pick up brain activity, pulse rate, oxygen level of your blood, as well as your breathing frequency and your motion. We have a number of techniques through the headband to help you fall asleep faster, help you sleep more deeply, and also help you wake feeling more refreshed. Deep sleep is much harder to achieve the older you get. So, and that's partly due to the normal aging process, and hopefully by encouraging better sleep throughout life, we can help to keep the brain healthy longer, to allow it to generate good optimal sleep even in older age.
I think probably the most interesting thing right now is the digitalization of sleep. But the problem is, people don't go see their doctors about sleep problems very often. And so if we can, and not just Phyllis, but if we can digitally get people to where they can identify the sleep problems, take sleep more importantly, because that's a fundamental problem, and easily get them to remedies that they find acceptable, then that's real progress.
We're here at CES to present Ergonite, which is a brain training system that's going to help you train your brain to sleep better. It's a headset that you use during the day, anytime that is most convenient for you, in order to perform the training. What I love about the sleep tech is that most of the technologies like us that exist for a long time, and you can find them in some sleep centers. And now with the new progress of science, it's possible to have it at home and to use it. So it's make it more available for as many people as that might need it.
Welcome to the show! Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore!
Well, hello everyone. Good evening on this lovely balmy day here in Arizona on June 3rd. Can you believe it's June already? Oh my gosh. I mean, time is going so quickly right now. So I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. My name is Marshall Shore. Now, I know some of you are out there watching us on Facebook. There's a few of you watching on Twitch, and even actually on YouTube, and even fewer watching us on Twitch. But you know, they're all different ways to watch the same show right here every week. Oh crap, and I just realized I have the wrong show up. I'm like, wait a minute, that's the wrong stuff popping up. Well, that's not gonna work. Hold on just a moment. I was like, why does that say the wrong day? Oh, you know, you ever one of those days, it's like, you know, I sat my keys down at one point and they were literally right there. 2 minutes later, I had no idea where I had dropped them. So, all right. So let me just pop in here for a moment. I'll do this. And things should be much smoother now. There we go. Much better. All right. So, you know, that's probably one of the reasons why I always try to do that. So today for June 3rd, I mean, we have a lot of things going on. Who knew there was such a thing as an egg day? So I want to wish you all happy Egg Day. I hope you had some eggs. It is also National Repeat Day. So kind of like Groundhog Day, I hope I don't keep losing my keys. So, because that's not good, not fun, no bueno. It is also National Chocolate Macaroon Day. So I hope everyone's out there. And I shouldn't take a bite of that because to try to talk with my mouth full of chocolate macaroon, not a good idea. So, you know, it's like there's so many cool things that have happened. It's like, you know, this is June. So happy Pride Month, everybody. I am so happy you're able here to join us. So what can you expect from Arizona History Happy Hour today? Well, we're going to have some trivia on Southern Arizona. We have a little bit of show and tell. We also have Little Arizona, and my green screen may give it away if you know what peak that is. We also have Arizona music history, as well as a cocktail. And of course, we have a very special guest. So if this is your first time, I just want to introduce myself as Marshall Shore. I've been here a little over 21 years ago. And, before that, I was working in a library in Brooklyn. It was that beautiful Carnegie building right there. And decided to trade that for something a little bit more modern, a little 1950 building in South Phoenix that now is home to an amazing, quite modern library. And to do all that, we had to load everything into a U-Haul. And you notice there might be a bit of a rainbow theme going on since June is National Pride Month, as we commemorate is probably a better term for those riots back in New York in 1969. What is considered to be the birth of the modern gay rights movement. Now, when we got here, we promptly moved into a beautiful 1956 ranch. Now, it was beautiful, except it was too many tones of beige. I'm happy to say now it is a lovely seafoam and cantaloupe. Just two tones. And there's what my kitchen looks like today. All that buttercream yellow tile, the matching in-the-wall oven, and even the push buttons inset in the wall. Now, as soon as I got here, all I kept hearing about how there was no history here. But I knew that wasn't true, because every time I went somewhere, whether it was on foot, on my bike, in my car, I kept coming across so many amazing people, places, and stories. And then there's that post-war boom that I think in a lot of ways made the Arizona that we all know and love. All those GIs that either were stationed here, trained here, or passing through on the way to somewhere else. And after the war, they were moving here in huge numbers. And in some cases looking for a house just like mine. And then my name is Marshall. I'm also known as the hip historian. And that means I get to play with Arizona history. So actually next week, I get to do two really cool things. I am talking to a Rotary group, and we're going to talk a little about Charles Poston. And also next week, we are doing a virtual telling workshop with the Copper Queen Library down in Bisbee. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, you can always reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, or even good old-fashioned email works. I see some of you have already found the chat. Now, if you're watching on Facebook, I will ask you to click in the bottom where it says share, so that way you can share all the fun and love we are sharing for Arizona history. Now, first off, I talk about moving here from New York, but I really started off in Indiana in a little tiny farm town of about 25 people. And so I had one goal living there, and that was to get out. But, growing up in that small town, I developed kind of a passion for that quirkiness that can be a small town. And so that's one of the reasons why I love to talk about some of the small towns. And today we are going to talk about Picasso, Arizona, which is in Pinal County, has a population of 430, was founded back in 1881. Now, many of you may have driven by it on your way to Tucson from Phoenix, because the 10 goes right by it. Now, the unique shape of this Picasso Peak was used as a landmark by travelers since prehistoric times. One of the first recordings was in the 1700s by Anaza expedition as it passed through the area. And, I always love to then refer to one of my favorite books, which is the Arizona Names Places by Will Barnes. And for Picasso, it is Spanish for peak or point. It was a well-known stage stop. And and Charles Poston, who I'll be talking about later this week, or actually next week, marching from Yuma East, writes poetically, "We camped at night at Old Picasso, a peak for which you'll find no match." So indeed, it was famous for just it being such a unique space and has been utilized by so many folks. It was also the westernmost battle of the Civil War, which they still do a reenactment of. And then there is Picasso Peak State Park, which is really a beautiful place. And you can also visit Rooster Cogburn's Ostrich Ranch. Now, they started in the early 90s actually as a ostrich ranch, and then a few years later decided that they should open it up to the public. And so that's what they did. Now, when they first started doing that, it wasn't much more than a tent, a folding table, and a couple of ostriches that you could hang out with. Now it's up to hundreds of ostriches, as well as dwarf goats, sheep, lorikeets, and even bunny rabbits. There's a petting zoo, so it's fun for the whole family to go visit. Now, if you drive by, you'll see such thing as the Knicker. It's been over a year since I've driven by this, so I don't know what all is still standing. But what drew me in was seeing that Nickerson sign and knowing that at one point there was more to it. And so as you go driving off into that, you find then what was Picasso Peak Trading Post, which is now no longer standing. You can see one image, the lower image of what it used to look like, and then above how the sign is no longer really there, just the outline, but you still see the top of that peak in the sign. And, it would not be a happy hour without a cocktail. And so indeed, PJ just brought that over a little bit ago. And so today we are having the Sacred Site Sangria. Boy, that's a mouthful. So what all is in it? Well, we've got a little bit of whiskey, some margarita mix, some aloe vera juice, so it must be healthy. Why, look at that. And there's even some fruit in it. We've got some apricots and some grapes and water. So, of course, it's got to be healthy. Now, let's bring on my bartender. Oh, and that's already clicked off, so we're not going to do that. So, PJ makes it really easy. He brings me cocktails just in a jar. And so all I have to do is pour. And there we have Sacred Site Sangria. Cheers. Oh, that is super refreshing and not as sweet as I was expecting. Well done, PJ. That's quite tasty. Not expecting anything else. All right. So today we have a really special guest that we're able to bring to you from such modern technology. Now, her flight outfit is obviously not done by Poochie. Not quite sure who did that. It's probably wool. Wouldn't want to be wearing that today on a plane here in Arizona because it's probably a bit toasty. But we are going to bring on my friend Homer Thiel. So let's get rid of my bartender because he's not doing anything. There we go. Good evening.
Hi, Marshall. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing very good. I was sitting at my desk and all of a sudden there's a message from you and I'm like, oh, I'm on. I had to put a shirt on.
Uh-oh. And a hat.
Yes. Oh, well, of course, I have a large hat collection, so I grabbed the nearest one.
So, Homer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a native of Traverse City, Michigan, which is in the Lower Peninsula. It's right where the Pinky is. And I attended the University of Michigan, got a degree in anthropology, archaeology, spent a couple of years traveling around the country doing archaeology projects. And then in 1988, went to ASU and got my master's degree and moved to Tucson in 1993. And I've been the historical archaeologist for Desert Archaeology Incorporated, a consulting contract archaeology firm since then.
Ah, very cool. So did you move here because of the snow?
That was part of it, but also because I got to go to grad school for free. So
okay. Understandable then. So, and you know, and what a great place we're in. I mean, there is so much history here.
Oh yeah.
Which I know we're going to touch a little bit on that this evening as we get a chance to go through some trivia. Now, unlike a lot of trivia that you might be used to, we are going to go through the multiple choice questions and multiple choice answers, and we'll get a chance to then at the end of that, we're going to go through and Homer's going to talk to us about some of those answers. And you might be shocked by some of those answers. I know I was kind of a little surprised by some of them. So I look forward to everyone's kind of feedback about that. So, all right. So let's do question 1. All right. So during the Paleo-Indian period, Clovis spear points have been found associated with what animals? A, mammoths, dire wolves, and grizzly bears. Or B, mammoths, sloths, and mastodons. C, mammoths, coyotes, and camels. D, mammoths, horses, and bison. All right, so we know obviously that those Clovis spear points are found near mammoths. What are the other animals that they are found in association with? All right, number 2. What was the first domesticated crop grown right here in Arizona during the early agricultural period, circa 2100 BC? All right, so was it A, squash, B, beans, C, corn, or D, maize? All right, so as we go on, so which of those do you think was the first domesticated crop here in Arizona? All right. So question 3. The Hokum built ball courts and platform mounds between AD 500 and 1450 for what purposes? A, religious ceremonies, B, trading goods, C, meeting potential spouses, or D, probably all of the above. So what do you think those ball courts and platform mounds were used for? All right, Father Kino, the Jesuit priest who explored southern Arizona in the 1690s and early 1700s, was a native of which European country? A, Italy, B, Spain, C, Germany, D, Switzerland. So which one of those countries was Father Kino from? All right. Coming up into the halfway point. The Autumn word, and I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of at least that first one. So, Eskuk?
Sakukson.
Oh, so cool. Oh, that sounds so much more like it than what I was coming up with. Okay, so Cookshon was transformed by the Spanish into the name Tucson. And when Homer says it, you can actually hear that. When I say it, not so much. But what does it mean? A, the place of cool water. B, at the base of the Black Hill. C, where mesquite trees are found. And D, hotland. Well, I know if they were here today what it would stand for, but we'll find out in just a little bit what it actually means. All right, question 6. The San Javier del Bach Mission Church, completed in 1797, was constructed by O'odham laborers under supervision by priests of which Catholic order? A, the Jesuits, B, Dominican, C, Franciscan, or D, Benedictine? So which Catholic order supervised the building of San Javier del Bach? All right. The Presidio San Augustine del Tucson was founded in what year by Captain Hugo O'Connor? Was it A, 1774, B, 1775, C, 1776? I want to break into music for that one. And D, 1777. So which year was the Presidio founded? All right. Question 8. What was sent to the Smithsonian when the Union soldiers retook Tucson from the Confederates in 1862? A, the Spanish-era record books from the Presidio Church. B, a taxidermied skunk. I wonder if it had a name. C, golden fish hooks. Or D, 2 meteorites used as blacksmith's anvils. So what was sent back to the Smithsonian when the Union soldiers were able to recapture Tucson? All right. Question 9. The Arizona Inn was founded in 1930 by Isabella Greenway, who was also A, the first Congresswoman, B, a close friend of Eleanor Roosevelt's, C, the owner of an airline, or D, all of the above. All right. So who thinks they know? Was it all of the above, or was it just one of those? All right. Moving on to what might be our last question, but I have a feeling there might be another one lurking about. Which famous gangster was arrested in Tucson in 1939? Was it A, Al Capone, B, Bugsy Siegel, C, John Dillinger, or D, Babyface Nelson? Which one of those gangsters was arrested in Tucson in 1934? And indeed, we do have a bonus question. All right. What can you see at the Presidio del Augustine del Tucson Museum? A, a 2,000-year-old early agricultural period pit structure. B, the recreated corner tower of the Spanish fortress. C, a Sonoran row house built in 1860s and 1870s. D, a fig tree that was bearing fruit in the 1880s. E, all of the above. All right. So while you're sitting there trying to figure out what answers you want to lock in as indeed your final answer, we are going to talk a little bit about some music history. So I know last week we talked about Rusty Warren, and I want to bring a little bit, she was such an influence around. She was actually in Detroit at one point and found 2 guys who were lip syncing to some of her records and other things. And they were a group called the Phono Fools, and they did pantomime antics. So meaning they were lip syncing those records. And so she was there, and one night she brought her own manager. They then were able to acquire him as their manager, and they started doing a little bit more traveling around. In fact, they came to a place in Scottsdale called the Interlude, and they performed there for a period. And then they went on to another gig. Eventually they made their way home and they had the opportunity. The interlude said, hey, we want you to come back. And they packed their bags, arrived at the door of the interlude, and the doors were locked. They never found out quite what happened to the interlude, and I've yet to find anyone who knows what happened to the interlude, why it just mysteriously locked its doors one day. So if anybody out there knows, I would love to know what the rest of the story is. All right, so now we're ready for some answers. This is when the real fun begins. All right, so during that Paleo-Indian period, Clovis spear points have been found associated with what animals? Well, we knew it was going to be mammoths, but it's also horses and bison. So first off, what are Clovis spear points?
They're a type of spear point that was used on throwing sticks, and they were big, and they have a big thing called a flute on the bottom that allows the spear point to be attached to the stone point, or to the shaft. And the Paleo-Indian period is from about 12,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago. That's the time period. A lot of the animals from that time period in Arizona have now gone extinct, including the mammoth, the horses that were here at that time, and the bison and the sloths and the mastodons and lots of other animals.
Except we do still have horses around. Yes,
but when the New World was so-called discovered by Christopher Columbus, there were no horses in the New World. They had to bring them over from the Old World.
Oh, I didn't realize there were native horses that then went extinct and then were imported.
Yes, horses originated in North and South America. It went across into Europe or through the Bering Straits. And then the horses that were in North and South America went extinct.
Oh. Well, there you go. All right. Question 2. What was the first domesticated crop here in Arizona? And the actual answer is, drumroll please, corn.
So archaeologists collect samples of dirt from everything that we dig up. We throw the dirt into water and the charred plant remains rise up to the surface and we skim them off. And we have people called ethnobotanists that can look under the microscope at the little charred fragments and identify what they are. And then certain seeds are sent off for radiocarbon dating. And that's how we know that there was corn growing here in southern Arizona 4,100 years ago, some of the oldest corn ever found in what is now the United States. Corn originated in Mexico, only a few hundred or maybe 1,000 years earlier than when it first shows up in Tucson.
Wow, I didn't realize that you just found like the charred remains in the dirt. I mean, that's pretty cool.
And sometimes we've been digging, and in certain conditions you find whole charred corn cobs from that time period. And the corn was quite small, maybe only 3-4 inches long for the corn cobs.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't like what we go, well, I guess I would say the state fair, but I'm not sure where that's happening or when it's happening. So
no, it was like a variety of popcorn, actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So the Hook'em built ball courts and platforms. And why did they build them? So it was all of those, from meeting a spouse to playing a game.
So ball courts are these oval, depressed areas with big banks so that people could stand or sit on the banks and watch ball games. And the ball games came up from Mexico. And you can see one of those ball courts at the Casa Grande National Monument, and I think at the Pueblo Grande National Monument.
Yeah, Pueblo Grande has one as well.
And you can see the platform mound at Pueblo Grande as well. And so archaeologists think that a lot of those function as they had periodic ceremonies, and during those ceremonies you could trade things like pots or cloth to other people, and it was a good way to find potential spouses outside of your own community.
Ah, so kind of like going on the dating game.
Yeah, or going to the Arizona State Fair.
And getting a big ear of corn.
Yeah.
All right. Father Kino, the Jesuit priest who explored southern Arizona, was a native of which European country? And people might be surprised that it was Italy.
He was born and baptized in this particular church. He wasn't born in the church, but he was baptized there. So the Catholic Church sent missionaries over to the New World to Christianize the Native Americans, as well as to do other horrible things. But in Arizona, we had priests from Spain, Italy, Germany, and Switzerland. There was a priest down at a site called Govavi, which is closer to the border. And we have letters that he wrote, and he would write off to his mother and sisters saying, please send me these things, including things like a waffle iron. And it would take several years for a big box of stuff to get to him on this mission. And there's a letter said that when he opened it up, half the stuff had been stolen out of the box. And you can imagine how depressing that was for this solitary missionary who'd been living there for years all by himself to open it up and discover the waffle iron was missing.
I know, after been waiting and looking forward to a waffle for years. Oh my gosh. He must have been rather crestfallen when that happened.
He died soon afterwards.
See, probably of a broken heart because he wanted waffles so bad.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna let you pronounce that word again because your version sounds much more like what it should.
Shukukshon.
Shukukshon. All right, so that's what became the name Tucson, but what does it mean? At the base of the Black Hill.
So that is what we call Sentinel Peak, and also it's known as A Mountain. And it is a remnant of a volcano, and the rock on it is black. At the very top, you can find what we call mortar holes, where Native Americans had a big pestle and were smashing up mesquite beans in a hole in the rock. And it's about maybe 1,000 feet from my house where I live.
And it looks like in these photos, there may have been a little bit of a flood there.
Yes, that's the Santa Cruz River. It ran year-round here in Tucson up into maybe the 1920s. And in the last couple of years, they have started running water, reclaimed water, down a portion of the river. They have placed an endangered species of fish that's native to the Santa Cruz River into it. And
oh, wow.
A lot of wildlife is showing up now. Herons and egrets and coyotes and javelinas and deer have all been enjoying that water source.
Wow, that's actually really cool that they've been reintroducing water into it and it's starting to come back.
Yes.
Wow. All right, so the San Javier del Bach mission was supervised by priests of what Catholic order? Franciscan.
So this is the best preserved Spanish church in the United States. It was founded in 1700 by Father Kino, who was a Jesuit priest. But in 1768, all of the Jesuit priests were expelled from the New World due to some political stuff involving the King of Spain. And the Franciscan guys came in. So the iconography of the church is Franciscan. And if you go inside, starting about 20 years ago, they had a team of restorers coming over from places like Turkey and Italy, and they cleaned the entire interior of the church of, you know, a couple hundred years worth of smoke and dirt. And it was amazing the difference, because all these black areas, when they cleaned them off, there were paintings underneath. And one of the cool things they found was there is a sort of a ridge running around right below the edge of the roof. And they found a bundle of arrows placed on that ridge out of sight. And they think that that was a way of some Native American who was had his own religion, sort of taking the power of the church and doing something with it by placing a bundle of arrows up there.
Oh, wow. But I mean, it really is spectacular.
Yes, and I believe it's reopening now post-COVID pandemic times, and so you can go inside. They have a nice little gift shop where you can buy stuff, and it's a living church. On Sundays they have, I think on Wednesdays they have masses. They hold funerals and weddings in there. It's really spectacular.
Wow, I didn't realize you could actually get married there. What that would be.
I think you have to be a member of the congregation to get married.
Okay, well, I can only imagine that it'd have to be something very special. They wouldn't just let anybody get married there because, oh my gosh. But
yeah, I suppose if you gave them enough money, they'd let you do it.
that is very likely the case. Now, quick question. So you've got Del Bach. The other church that's kind of on the other way south, is that Tucumcari? Tumacacori. Now, is that around the same time period?
The Tumacacori church was built in the 1820s, and so that's why it's a different style of church.
Okay.
And then the Tumacacori, it's a National Historic Park, and there's two other Spanish missions that are Calabasas and Guavavi, which are part of that park, but you can only see those on special tour days.
Oh, so I guess I need to find out when the special tour days are.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the Presidio San del Augustine del Tucson was founded in what year by Captain Hugo O'Connor? And the answer is B, not a musical, but is indeed just the year before. So 1776.
Oh, nope. 1775.
Oh, 1775. Oh, I was about to break into song yet again. Okay.
So Hugo Carnaro is an interesting guy. He was an Irishman who was in the Spanish military. At the time, Ireland was Catholic, and a lot of the second and third sons of prominent families went to Spain and joined the military because Ireland was having problems with England at the time. So he founded the fort. The construction started in 1776. It was completed in 1783. About 100 to 110 soldiers were stationed there. And it was in use as first a Spanish and then Mexican fort until 1856.
Oh, wow.
And during that time, there were between 400 and 500 people living inside the fort or immediately on the outside of it, and about 500 Native Americans living in two nearby communities. So the total population of the Tucson Basin was about 1,000 people, say around the year 1800. And today there's over 1 million people.
I was going to say it's a very different picture than today.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. What was sent to Smithsonian after the Union soldiers retook Tucson from the Confederates at the Picasso Peak battle? And I was so surprised by this because I did not expect that at all.
So in the 1820s, people were down in the Santa Rita Mountains, which are south of Tucson, harvesting timber to use for roof beams. And they came across a pair of giant meteorites. And they somehow got them into wagons and brought them up to Tucson and used them as meteorite anvils. One of them had a very nice flat surface. The other one is not so flat. In 1846, when the Mormon Battalion marched through Tucson, a lot of the guys were writing stuff down for guidebooks, and it became known throughout the United States and Europe that there were these 2 meteorite anvils. So in 1862, when the Union Army retook Tucson from the Confederates, General Carleton loaded up the 2 meteorites onto wagons and sent them south to the port of Guaymas. One of the meteorites was sent up to San Francisco. The second was taken down to Panama. They dragged it across the Isthmus of Panama to another boat, and where it took it up to the Smithsonian. And then after the Transcontinental Railroad was built, the one in San Francisco was sent across. They used to be in the room right next to the Hope Diamond in the Smithsonian, which is where I've seen them there. But I don't think they're there at that location anymore.
Huh. My friend Anita says her husband has a piece of meteorite from there as well.
Yeah, if you go on eBay, there's all these things saying they're bits of the Tucson meteorite. And there was a section of it that was cut off at some time. I don't know if it's true that they're from the Tucson meteorites, but there's certainly a lot of pieces floating around that said they are.
Well, and then I also love that this is one of those old stereo optic images where you would have had the special view holder to be able to focus it, but then you would have been able to see the meteorite in 3D.
Yes. There's another one of these images taken by a guy named Carlton Watkins of the guy sitting on the steps of the San Francisco Academy of Science, or the other one. I think he's got a top hat on.
Ah, okay.
And you know I like top hats.
Because I hear you have a large hat collection.
I do.
So I'm kind of surprised for like each question you're not like swapping out hats.
Well, if you could see how packed my closets were, you'd understand.
So it's kind of like me and the keys. I mean, I can't believe I like set them down like right next to where I was, and minutes later they were gone.
Yeah. Well, that's how archaeologists find things. You lose them.
So Homer, does this mean I'll come to my house and find things?
I don't just cleaning, no.
Dang. All right. So question 9. The Arizona Inn was founded in 1930 by Isabella Greenway. And she was also D, all of the above.
So the Arizona Inn is a historic inn that's, how old is it? 91 years old this year. It's beautiful on the inside and it's beautiful grounds and it's very expensive. Her husband was, I think, John Greenway, and he died, and then she became the first female congresswoman for Arizona. And while she was in Washington, D.C., she became friends with Eleanor Roosevelt. And she might have been friends beforehand because I think she was in the bridal party of the Roosevelts when they got married.
Ah, okay.
So, and she was big on various stuff during the Depression, working with Eleanor Roosevelt. And besides that whole thing, she owned an airline. Crazy.
Wow, that would have been, I mean, that would have been a time period where airlines would have been quite rare, and to have a woman who was head of one.
Yes. I have back in the early 90s, they were getting rid of a bunch of the original dishes from the Arizona Inn, and I managed to get some of them. So.
Oh, so do you remember what the name of her airline was?
No, but it's easy to find
okay.
online. Yeah. I think on her Wikipedia page it lists it.
Okay. All right. Which famous gangster was arrested in Tucson in 1934? And it was C. John Dillinger.
So in 1934, the Dillinger gang was on the run, and they came to Tucson, and some of them checked into the Hotel Congress. And while they were here, the Hotel Congress caught on fire, and the guys paid the firemen to go up into the room and retrieve their luggage. And the firemen noticed, wow, this luggage is really heavy. And then I can't remember if somebody opened up one of the luggage and saw like guns or something, or if someone said, hey, these guys are kind of odd, and looked through mugshots and recognized them. But anyway, so the Tucson police then went to the house where the gang was staying and arrested John Dillinger. And he was, the biggest criminal of the time period, #1 on the FBI's wanted list. And here was this little rinky-dink police force in a small town in Arizona catching this guy. And it, of course, made national news. So nowadays, in the spring, pre-COVID, but probably now, coming year, they have Dillinger Days in Tucson, where cars from that time period in the 30s are parked along Congress Street, and people dress up in costumes and have fun.
And at one point, with Damien, we were able to get on the rooftop of the Congress to actually look at the sign, but you could see bits of the building that had burnt and they hadn't bothered rebuilding.
Yes, they took off the 3rd floor of the building, so now it's 1 story less. And when you go inside the lobby, they've restored it back in the late 80s, I think, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really do like the Congress. And it's got a really good bar in it as well. Not that I'm prescribing that people should go have cocktails, but
why not?
Exactly, why not? The world is opening up just a little bit more. So, all right. So now we have our bonus question. So what can you see at Presidio San Agustin del Tucson Museum? And the answer is all of the above. So let's take a look at all of the above. What was all of that?
So So back in 1999, Tucson voters did something called a tax increment fund to take increases in tax money away from the state and use it to reinvest in cultural institutions in Tucson. And they decided, let's do an archaeology dig to see if there's enough of the Presidio fort from the Spanish days to rebuild a section of it. So I led the archaeological excavations, and we sure enough found that we had the corner tower foundations and the walls, and a prehistoric pit house from 2,000 years ago.
Wow.
And they decided, sure, let's rebuild this. So we rebuilt the corner of the old fort. There's a ramada with a pit house that you can look down into. There are various structures. There's a soldiers and civilians house and a warehouse. We have a cannon that we fire. I'm a member of the Presidio Trust, which runs the museum now. And we have living history days. Once a month we have those, and then there's other events take place during the year. During the summer we're doing a children's camp, but we do have some nighttime events, including showing movies. And I think the next one is a local scholar talking about the first ice cream in Tucson. Oh. And the story of how ice cream was made back before they had electricity. And, there was some sort of chemical process that you could use to make ice, which seems crazy, but they were, they wanted ice cream.
Exactly. And so, wow. So question, is that going to be a virtual program, or is it or an in-person?
Both. We all throughout COVID, we've been doing events that have included either Zoom only or live with a Zoom function as well.
Oh, very cool.
If you go to TucsonPresidio.com, I think is the website, you can find out information about it.
Okay, nice. And you can learn about the first ice cream in Tucson.
We have a blog on there that you can go to, where I've written articles and learn more about interesting things that you never knew that you needed to know.
That sounds like this show a lot of times. I'm like, oh, who knew? But that's half the fun of didn't even know that. And so what about this fig tree with really old figs?
So there's a house there that was built in the 1860s and 1870s by a woman named Soledad Jacome, who was as it turns out, eventually her husband deserted her and moved up to the Mesa or Scottsdale or someplace, and started a second family and left her alone with 4 daughters. When we dig up the backyard where the modern day restrooms are, we found outhouse pits. Back before people had indoor toilets, they had a hole dug in the ground with a building built over it. And so one of the outhouse pits that we found was filled with dried up old nasty figs. And of course, in the corner of the property is the fig tree that those came from. And so it's a huge tree. And in the next few weeks, we should be able to harvest figs off of it.
Ooh.
Figs that were not in an outhouse. Thank you.
Well, yes. No, I would not want those figs. But I'm like, how cool is that?
Yeah, it was a big surprise. And it was fun to find. I mean, outhouses are always, for archaeologists, the greatest place to dig because you find stuff that dropped out of people's pockets. You find the stuff that people were hiding, and then eventually they end up using them as trash disposal. And you can always link the contents of outhouses to specific families or groups of people. And that really provides a lot of information about things that weren't written down in contemporary records. Like, what did people eat? What kind of medical problems did they have?
Oh, yeah.
What kind of toys did the kids play with? You can look at the types of dishes to tell their social economic status or the types of meat. We take the flotation samples and we can tell what kind of plants they were eating. So, yeah.
Oh, very cool. Who would have thought all that from an outhouse? I mean...
And here's another unusual fact. You know you're at the poop layer in the outhouse because the dirt turns green. Yes.
Does that mean it's nutrient rich or?
Honestly, I don't know why it turns green, but it's green.
Wow.
Almost like the color behind me, that color.
Wow, that's an awfully bright color to be down there. I thought you meant like a dark green. I wasn't expecting it to be like a
light green.
Wow. Yeah, actually, the house I grew up in back in Indiana had an outhouse. I mean, we had indoor plumbing, but
let's go dig it up.
Who knows what we'd find in that thing? Oy. Well, Homer, so, I always like to ask people, and people who watch the show kind of know how did they do. I see some folks have already been sharing their answers because for me, it's always more about what you know walking out than what you know coming in. And so actually getting 6 out of 11 for Jeff. So other folks got 5 out of 11. So that's pretty good. So, thank you for sharing some of the wonders of Southern Arizona, which I'm hoping we can actually go explore. I was just chatting today with Susan over at Invisible Theater about maybe coming to see a show or something.
There's lots to do in Arizona, Southern Arizona, and it's amazing how many people from the Phoenix area have never been down here. And
see, I think that's because they don't know the back way. If they knew the back way through Florence, so you avoid all that Michigas on the 10, you get a stop and see the Tom Mix Memorial by the Tom Mix Wash.
Is it true that the prison in Florence has a gift shop?
Actually, I'd heard that closed because I wanted to go get some things as Christmas gifts for folks from the prison. But I don't, maybe with COVID, they've opened it back, or after COVID, they'll open it back up again. We can only hope.
I hope so.
And, and Florence has this really cool, they went through and did this like audio driving tour of Florence. You actually it's like a podcast and you just sit there and listen to it as you drive around town. And it's like a little radio drama.
So the Tucson Presidio Trust that I'm a member of has it's called the Turquoise Trail. It's a blue line painted on the sidewalk throughout downtown Tucson. Mm-hmm. We have a map that has the historic stuff on it, but there's also an app where you can walk from stop to stop and listen to somebody tell you what you're looking at. And that Turquoise Trail is extremely popular with between 30 and 40,000 people a year getting the maps and walking it.
Well, and so so you can find that on the Presidio?
Yes. On the website, you can find a version of the map, but you also it gives you instructions on how to download the app. And
okay, so my friend Anita actually posted the Tucson Presidio website. So people go there, they can learn about the walking tour, they can learn about the program on ice cream in Tucson, and all kinds of other fun stuff.
Yep.
So thank you, Anita, for doing that. Yeah, I mean, that's the fun thing of really doing this is there's always there's so many stories. I mean, and it's so much fun getting to hear people tell that their stories that they like to hear and tell people. So thank you so much for sharing some history with us.
Well, you're welcome.
And maybe when I come to Tucson, we should go to the Congress and maybe have a cocktail.
Sure. There's there are a number of local distilleries and breweries downtown too, including the one the Whiskey Del Bach, which is become very popular.
Indeed, and that's actually in my cocktail.
I know, I was surprised.
So no, I mean, PJ's been really great about using as local ingredients as he can get.
I know that there's a gin made from juniper berries from Mount Lemmon, which is the big mountain north of Tucson. So yeah.
So Homer, I would just again thank you so much for coming on and sharing with all of us some cool history.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Have a great rest of your evening.
Okay, I will.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh. So much fun. And corn. Who knew it was more like popcorn? So now if you are wondering why should you share, that's exactly why you should share for cool stories that you wouldn't get everywhere. All right. So now we're going to go on to show and tell. And I know because I've done this before, things with green screen. So I just want to hold up the actual thing. And yes, it's green screened. Oh, even the yellow is green screened. All right. But I did take a photo of it. And so it is a Metro Phoenix map from 1968 that was a gift from Arizona First National, or the First National Bank of Arizona. And they did all kinds of giveaways, free things to get people to realize that. They had their main building, and actually let's go a little bit larger on that. So their main building opened up in 1956. And on the side of that tower, you'll see a 1. That 1 was like 21 feet tall to kind of put that building in perspective. The building is still there. It is no longer a bank building, but it is ASU's University Center. It also, as a bank, played prominently in a TV pilot that went nowhere called Young Men in a Hurry, starring the Kingston Trio that did a pilot. And they didn't want to have to move to Phoenix to do this TV show, so they didn't do that. Now, the artwork, they were known for having all kinds of artwork. So you had Jay Datis doing artwork in there, and I heard, I remember a couple of years ago when they were renovating it for the University Center, some of them had been covered, and they didn't know what was there, and they damaged some of them. Or it may have been murals maybe above the door. I don't remember which mural it was, but some artwork did get damaged. And I think a lot of it, sadly, if you go in, is just gone. But he was a very popular muralist around town doing murals a variety of places. And so the artwork on that map was Walt Dietz. And he was he actually had a comic strip called Fanfare. And he lived here in the Valley, and he did a lot of comics that were based on sports. He had golf. He actually was inducted into the Bowling Hall of Fame because he did so much cartoons that were in bowling alleys, because that's when it was really big. So next week, we have Buffalo Jump Records with Steven, and that's going to be a really good show. We'll be talking about all kinds of what they do is record current indigenous people's music. So that'll be a fun show, getting to hear about some of the background of that, which will be fascinating. And I don't want to give anything away, so I'm not going to say anything more because I want him to do that. So a little bit more about the Copper Queen workshop coming up. This coming week, it is going to be through the Bisbee Library. It is my friend Bev and I doing it. So if you go to Marshall Shore Hip Historian, you will find it there. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm hoping we get a lot of Bisbee folks sharing some of the stories from Bisbee. And always remember, if you have any questions, comments, you can always throw them to me through good old-fashioned email. You can throw me something on Instagram. You can track me down there, as well as good old-fashioned email, which is just hello@hiphistorian. So please, I always ask, because, you know, people are really honestly my best source of stories. I mean, just you heard tonight, it's like, oh, and my friend Linda says, I'm actually, so this coming week, I'm talking for Scottsdale Rotary. I'm going to give them a little history, kind of my version of Arizona history. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So, all right. I always like to give a shout out to Cole and Travis, who did the video that we started with. Cole wrote the music and Chris did the video work, as well as always PJ Vader Barron, who creates an amazing cocktail every week that better tells the story of what we're talking about. I mean, it's like that he included the whole Del Bach whiskey in my little sangria, which was really delightful. Now, as we say goodbye, the outro music is going to be Mr. Ho's Orchestratica. He is a Sunny Slope boy now living on the East Coast with a full orchestra, as well as a partial orchestra, and found film footage. Some of it's my own, some of it I found through Library of Congress. But everyone, have a great rest of your evening, and I will see you here, same bat time, same bat channel, as we get to learn more about history, and it's going to be Buffalo Jump Records. So have a good night, all.